Tonight, a hazard in the air. Thick gray and orange smoke billows from a chemical facility in Conyers, Georgia, after a fire today forcing nearby residents to evacuate.
Please spread the word to stay away from this area at this point. The interstate, as you can see, is backed up.
Shelter in place. Keep your doors and windows closed. In the event the wind shift, this thing can change really quickly.
Officials say around 5 a.m. today, as employees were inside, a sprinkler malfunctioned, causing a chemical to start the blaze, which is now out and was contained to the roof.
I do not know the specific type of chemical, but only that it is water reactive.
The company saying in a statement, our team is on the scene, working with first responders and local authorities to assess and contain the situation. No one was injured. The Environmental Protection Agency is now conducting air monitoring. Law enforcement pulling out respirators as a precaution. This isn't the first chemical scare at the BioLab facility that manufactures pool and spa products, according to the U.S. Chemical Safety Board. In 2020, a plume of hazardous chemicals was released.
Since I've been a part of Rockdale County for 7 years, this is probably the third incident of this magnitude.
No timetable yet on when the area will be safe. Dana Griffin, NBC News.
Welcome everyone to the Hurting Humanity channel. There are people out there that think that people like me and you think that everything is a conspiracy. I tend to think that the majority of these people think that everything that happens is somehow a coincidence. And if that is the case, there seems to be a lot of coincidences happening all at once. A lot of things that you would never hear about in the past happening at once. And it seems like there's a lot of quote unquote coincidences happening in the state of Georgia all at once, right? And this is why people need to start thinking to themselves and say, wow, you know what? That is a lot of stuff happening in a state like Georgia. Why all of a sudden are weird things happening in Georgia? Well, if you haven't heard, as you saw there, a chemical plant fire exploded, causing thousands of people to shelter in place and evacuate. And again, we're seeing a lot of these chemical fires happening almost on a weekly basis in a lot of states. That goes very quiet, gets very little press, of course, because they don't want you to realize that all of these corporations who own the railroads, who own these chemical factories, are setting them off by design because they're polluting the air quality, they're polluting the water. And really, if you look at what's happening in Georgia, this is not a coincidence at all, is it? Now, let's start with what just occurred. For people that don't know about Hurricane Helene, the pattern that hurricane took is so abnormal that people should have just seen the trajectory of it before it happened and then the after effect of what it did and said to themselves, well, this is very strange because we don't often see hurricanes come up and move towards the west. They usually tend to shift off and follow what they tell us is called the jet stream. But if you look at the way that the storm went, it almost looks like a direct hit on Georgia. You could see exactly where it went through. It went through the entire state of Georgia. The top of Florida got hit, almost like deliberately took that route because usually we see more of Florida get hit than most other states. But no, it looked like it directly was aiming towards Georgia, right? So Georgia gets hit. And what happens out of Helene? Hundreds of thousands of people are without power. Close to 1 million people in Georgia are without electricity. On top of that, large counties like Augusta and large towns in Georgia have shut off the water. That's right, shut off the water. Now, there's two things that could occur, obviously, with a major power outage. If you don't know, if you're somebody who has well water, if your power goes out, you will not be able to use the water. If you turn the water thing, turn the faucet on with the power out and you have well water, you're not going to get water. You're going to need a manual pump, which is something I've warned about over the years. If you have city water, obviously, city water, you will still be able to get water out of the faucet with the power out, but you're also getting exposed to contaminated city water. So look at this from this perspective, right? This bizarre storm that takes a pattern we've never seen before for the most part, where I showed you a map where all of these hurricanes, how they always map them out. They showed us all the hurricanes on a map and how they all always go, right? Every single one over the last 100 years or so. None of them took a route like this where it just went right straight through Georgia and then it went towards the west, right? Then all these people are without power. Then the government themselves is shutting off the water and they're shutting off the gas stations so people can't get gasoline for their generators or their cars. They're pretty much getting locked down where they are. On top of that, here's another huge coincidence, right? Watershed has issued a water advisory for parts of Atlanta and other metro cities, forcing people and making people, telling people that they need to boil their water. The Department of Watershed Management, DWM, issued a boil water advisory out of an abundance of caution and in accordance with Georgia EPD guidance for public advisory. DWM calls for immediate water restriction for critical uses only to allow system pressures to rebuild. So they're shutting off water in some areas. In other areas, they're telling you to restrict your water, and they're telling you on top of that you need to boil your water because it's likely contaminated water while all that's going on. That's all just from Hurricane Helene. So then while these people in Georgia are struggling through recovering from this, which they probably don't have a clue that this was a direct hit, weaponized weather attack, then we get a convenient chemical plant going off. Now you might say, well, chemical plants, they got chemicals. I guess the chemicals can go off, right? And then that forced 100,000 people in Georgia to shelter in place or evacuate the area. But what you probably don't know is that this specific lab, which is called BioLab, which supposedly is a pool and spa treatment facility that has chlorine and other chemicals like that. Well, this isn't the first time that they've had a massive problem. They've had leaks, they've had things go off, they've had chemical explosions, 2004, 2020. They have failed inspection after inspection after inspection, yet the chemical factory is still running. And remember, these things are owned by private companies, private corporations. And usually what happens is a place like this, it'll be under a corporation name. It'll have a couple faces on the corporation. In this specific case, it's KIK Consumers, which was acquired by Centerbridge, which if you look up, these are just billion-dollar corporations with people you've never heard of before, but usually they're under an umbrella that goes back to Vanguard, BlackRock, or State Street. So in 2004, this same exact factory had a chemical fire that occurred, causing a massive smoke plume that stretched nearly to South Carolina. The fire involved the same things: chlorine, a highly reactive substance used in pool and spa products, which triggered a large-scale evacuation, impacted over 50 miles around the site. In 2020, an incident in September, two separate events occurred at the BioLab facility. First, a thermal decomposition event involving acid, TCCA, caused a plume of hazardous fumes, resulting in the closure of I-20 for 6 hours and the evacuation of surrounding businesses. So it's like deja vu, because I-20 was shut down from this one in 2024, right? So this place just continues to have chemical bombs. Where's the government to come in here if you're telling me that this is all just a coincidence? So where's the government to come in here and say, well, this building is obviously maybe not up to code, or the people who are running it don't know what they're actually doing, because they're putting civilians at risk. Look how many people just got uprooted who are already struggling through the hurricane that just hit. On top of that, how many people are ingesting the fumes in the air? This isn't, people hear chlorine and they're like, oh, it's just chlorine. It sounds like it's no big deal. Because they jump in pools that are filled with chlorine, and they don't stand around going, hey, why are people getting cancer? Well, you're swimming in chlorine. We could add that to the list of reasons that cancer rates are so high, right? The government told you, hey, if you get a pool, you should put chlorine in it. Nobody thinks twice about it. And meanwhile, with a lot of these people, I'm not an expert on pools, but when people nuke their pools, you ever seen like a pool that's green? They put these big chemical chlorine things in it, the liquid chlorine. They dump in there. It literally could melt. If you have a vinyl pool or anything like that, there's stories out there of the chlorine melting it. Yet 24 hours later, family of 6 is swimming in the pool. Hey, everybody, we're living the American dream. Oh, yeah, you're just in toxic chemicals that you aren't realizing because you're not burning on the surface right now, but you can't imagine what it's doing underneath the skin. So those are things that we have to look at now out of this story, right? Because water contamination is a big thing. This is right outside of Atlanta, right? So water contamination is big. People actually breathing this in is a huge problem because this could have immediate effects. You could have immediate effects from the fumes of something like chlorine. I mean, I've seen people who have pools, like you're not supposed to even touch the chlorine with your bare hand, the chlorine tablets that people put into pools, let alone ingest it, breathe it in, right? They put them in these big buckets. You've probably seen them before at Walmart or Target or any of these stores. They have these huge chlorine buckets with the tablets in there, and it's hazardous, right? So it's funny because when people hear biolab, they immediately think of what? Well, we all know they're thinking of a disease going out in the air, something along those lines. But these are toxic chemicals that humans should not breathe in. And when you have one happening consistently at a place that's consistently having that problem, you think to yourself, oh, and then it continues to change hands. Ownership just continues to change hands. They keep the name Biolab. And then this thing explodes right after the hurricane because sprinklers went off. That's the excuse that they give you. Sprinklers went off. But then if you take a step back, right, and you look at it, because remember, we have all these people that believe every single thing is a coincidence because they can't actually start writing down all of these places, all of these things, because they become so desensitized. They start thinking that this is normal. This is not normal. Okay, Palestine and the one I just covered a couple of days ago, all of these chemicals going off, being released out of trains, bombs going off. You might remember the trucks that flipped over in Arizona that had an orange gas come out that looked like it was something right out of Batman 1989. Not to mention all of the food manufacturing places that were exploding. We had airplanes flying into them. I mean, if you were going to sabotage a country, this is the thing. The mindset that these people have is that they literally would need to see a tank at their front door to think that we were under attack or something was going on. They wouldn't actually believe that, well, if these people control all these corporations and they want to contaminate water, contaminate the food supply, control all these things, which they already do, which is why you see people like Bill Gates scooping up the farmland. You see these corporations who actually own water. I mean, buy up all these water supplies. You'd say to yourself, if psychopaths are in power, they don't need to roll the military down the road because that might cause unity among civilians. Silent weapons for quiet wars, right? We could tell and feel like something's really off, right? Everybody could feel it because everybody's very anxious. Everybody's very upset with the political parties, the opposite political party that they vote for. So that's where their focus is. Meanwhile, we just consistently see all these bizarre things happening around chemical factories, smoke bombs. This isn't normal to see these black smoke bombs constantly going on around the United States of America because America's under attack and they are strategically targeting specific places for whatever reason, because they have a map clearly of where they expect us to all be by 2030, by 2040, by 2050, if we're here by then. I know a lot of people think the trumpets might sound by then, but let's just say hypothetically we're here then. They have a plan to move us to specific spots. So how else would you move people to specific spots? You could do a lot of things, right? You can tell people that, well, if you live in this state, women don't have rights. You can tell people if you live in this state, gays don't have rights. You can tell people if you live in this state, you have to put poison inside your body every year annually, or you can't live in this state and buy food at the grocery store. So they could do that angle, but they could also say, hey, you know what? We can also make sure that these states and these areas that we don't want you to live in are unlivable. So if there's any resources there, we could just drown you out. We could flood you out. Don't forget, I was talking about this and I recently noticed that they were blocking my videos when I was putting the article in, specifically my video after Helena struck, which I put up on the website, which isn't available on YouTube because I couldn't get it up on YouTube. The FEMA buyout thing is a big thing. And they didn't expect people to notice that FEMA was buying out people. They're going into these zones where there's flooding, where there's chances of floods. Let's say a place like Florida, county in Florida. They're going in there and they're giving people who own property double the value of their property to get them to move for their best interest. So they're buying people's land up, giving them double the value. That's your tax money that they're scooping it up with. And they're trying to force them out of these areas. They're trying to say it's unlivable zones, right? So then when they continue to hit these places with these hurricanes, they're literally making it unlivable. If your house doesn't get destroyed, right? If you're lucky enough that your house, everybody in the block's house was destroyed and yours somehow managed to stay up, well, they're still going to force you out of the area because they're going to say it's a hazard zone. It's unlivable. The water's contaminated. The land's contaminated. Your house is going to probably fall into the ground, they'll tell you. They're moving people around like that. And now we're seeing Georgia targeted, which is ironic about a lot of the stuff, that we see going on with the left-right. Is how they play into race, right? So all people of color are supposed to vote Democrat. They pretty much guilt them into voting it because they pretend like they care about those people the most, even though the largest black populations are in Florida, Texas, and then Georgia. And these are three of the most commonly hit places, which is just, it shows you too. I mean, everything is just so inverted. The people who are the most racist, the people who hate black people the most, are the people who play to them. Like Bill Gates, who goes to third world countries so that you think that he's not, that he loves and cares about people of color. I mean, it's a joke. It's an utter joke. So I'm sure that there's something to it with Georgia as well, being in the Bible Belt, that Georgia is a targeted area, and it might even play into the theme going on here with the coming election, because remember how that played out last time with the votes in Georgia and the lawsuits, the whole charade. Let's not even call it a lawsuit because it wasn't real. Let's watch how that plays out, because part of the narrative that's out there right now with Georgia after Helene, now the chemical bomb, is that Donald Trump is going down to Georgia and the Democrats are ignoring Georgia. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden don't care. They're out doing nothing. They're out at the beach. They're not paying attention, just like with Maui, right? Then they'll probably come in and say that Georgia somehow is a Democratic state. They're gonna play into it with that as well. So these are strategic things. These are not coincidence theories. These are things that are actually happening, right? We see storms heading towards specific states, taking routes we've never seen before. Nobody out there can say that that's a normal route, but what they do is they give you the verbatim that the government and the mainstream media, which is one and the same, is feeding everyone, right? Well, the storm went that way because the pole shifts are off and the jet stream isn't what it once was because of the climate. Oh, so now the thing could take a zigzag. Now what are we going to get? We're going to get blizzards in, what are you going to tell us next, right? We're going to get blizzards in Florida and California, and people won't think that it's the government weaponizing weather. They'll think it's actually from the climate because they've been trained now to believe that everything that is of the climate agenda. So all these bizarre things could occur. So you have that bizarre route, you have a chemical bomb go off, you have the power out pretty much across a large majority of the state. Then on top of that, with the power out, you have the government coming in and saying, we're going to shut your water off too. As if, hello, you need water? Well, we have to shut off. We have to ration water now. You need to boil your water because your water is now contaminated. I mean, this is a very strategic attack clearly on the state. I talked before Helene hit, and I said this is a weird trajectory. Maybe they are targeting Georgia. Maybe they're trying to target Tennessee as well, right? Well, they certainly targeted Georgia, did they not? Went right as planned because we're getting one after the other after the other. And now the state is like, it's looking unlivable. You could probably expect they're going to build their new infrastructure there very soon because now that the city's destroyed, once you take down a city like this, and a state like this, I should say, but a lot of the metro cities, the surrounding cities, Atlanta, etc., you flood it out. That's how they rebuild the infrastructure because they say the buildings are damaged. They have to demolish the buildings and build new buildings. That's part of this AI governance is that the technology has to be in place. So they have to destroy structures. Right? Well, what better way to destroy a structure than flood it? What do you think they're going to do? Put bombs in all the building and blow all the buildings up and tell you that it was okay? No, they're not. This is the easiest way for them to do it. They have everything in place to continually throw weather at us, weaponize weather at us, and that's what they're going to do. So prayers for people in Georgia who are affected by this and all the other states, because the weaponized weather is just going to continue. And people who live in states that are not affected obviously don't pay much attention to it. But eventually it's going to come to all the states. Because you could be in a state where you're like, well, I'm up by a coast. I don't have to worry about flooding. Oh, you will. You will, because the more they start easing it into places that you don't expect it to be, the more desensitized people become of it. Then all of a sudden you're seeing tornadoes on the beach. You're seeing tornadoes in these, in the middle of cities like New York, right? Which sounds ridiculous, but you will. Like earthquakes in New York, which you haven't seen. These are all things that are coming. All with precise planning. They know where they want to target, what places they want to target, how they want to move people around like cattle, and where they're going to put these smart cities. We don't know. We don't have their blueprint. We can only go off of some of the stuff that's out there. Like I covered St. Petersburg in Florida, right? How they want to put this smart city infrastructure in place. Well, good way to do it is to start hitting it with hurricanes, and they get hit every time one of these comes through. Keep flooding it out, right? But they know it's their map, right? This is their game. And unfortunately, we have to participate in it, but all we are pawns in the game. But we could warn people about what they're doing. But unfortunately, too many people, there's too many layers to peel off, and too many people think that these things are coincidences because you can't, the only thing that they would hear and believe if it was an attack is if they hear a missile or a bomb going off. Because they don't believe in weaponized weather, and they don't believe that this is the type of way that these globalists would go after individual civilians by attacking communities with chemical bombs, by shutting off power, by poisoning the water, because they don't even realize, most of these people, that you need food and water to survive. And the majority of them will go haywire without electricity as well. So pray for the people in Georgia. Again, this is just another huge coincidence, right? It looks like, we're seeing this, what they have mapped out playing out, right? Because this is a huge chemical bomb. I mean, this looks like East Palestine, this smoke bomb you see in the air. You can see some of those pictures in this video that people took from airplanes flying above this area, right? I mean, how often do you see that? A black smoke bomb that's that big, right? Oh, a little bit of water got on chlorine. It looks like somebody literally probably lit a match in there with some gasoline and blew this thing up deliberately. But of course, they'll tell you it's just another coincidence while they uproot people and ruin their lives. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.